Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today I wanted to touch on a expansion, kind of the other side of what we talked about in the previous video. Today, for this one, though, instead of being what makes a successful kingdom, we're going to talk about what actually makes a successful jump project, and then we're going to talk about a couple misconceptions that can often happen. Now, we first have to kind of define exactly what type of success are you looking for and what is really the purpose of a jump project. So that's where we're going to start, and then we'll expand forward. As always, before we get started, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. Okay, so let's start with one. What is the purpose of a jump project? Well, for all intensive purposes, it is, no pun intended, it is to go into a kingdom, right? It is to take an organized group, go into a kingdom, and establish your vision for said kingdom. This typically happens because players have been playing in kingdoms where they've spent enough time there. Maybe they notice that, hey, there's some good things they do. Hey, there's some opportunities and things that they could do differently, or things they feel that, you know what, if I did, if I was in the kingdom, I might do it this way. But instead of them, like some people do, which is, for lack of better words, right, they kind of F over or mess over the kingdoms they're in to try and get what they want, right? Especially if there's competent leadership there. What they really should do is just go make their own project and see if they can build a good kingdom, right? Don't mess over someone else's thing. That's going to be another video. But that is really what you're trying to do, right? You're looking at your past experiences, your current knowledge, how you understand the game, and you're saying to yourself, you know what, I think I could probably build a really good kingdom. So that's really where the source, right, the origin for why people want to do jumper projects. We're not talking about a solo jumper. We're talking about a project. You're doing that because you want to go in with a larger group than anyone else could be potentially going into a new kingdom with. This is for the sole purpose of establishing your group's presence and majority power / control in the kingdom early. So you have a less likely chance of opposition, right, being able to do anything. So then you go in there and you're able to make the rules, set the goals. How are we going to manage this event or that event? How many alliances are we going to have? How are we going to distribute holy sites, right? The whole enchilada. That is what you're trying to do with the jumper project. So now that we have an understanding there, let's then touch on what are actual successful traits and characteristics that could define a jumper project as being successful. Number one is going to be establishing majority control and presence. That means that regardless if you have a foothold in every Zone 1 province to start, if you have a foothold in every Zone 2 province to start, or if you have majority presence in Zone 3. Right? What it means is that you are the largest group, you're the biggest group, you have a good amount of the top spots or all the top spots on the Alliance leaderboard, and you have really kind of cemented your group's power in the kingdom. Number two, the majority, if not all, of your alliances in your group make it to Zone 3. That's important because you obviously want to make sure that you're kind of, in more or less in control of ratios. There is a small asterisk here, but essentially, if let's say you have, and I'm just going to give an example, let's say you have 6 alliances that are going to Zone 3. You want to have 4 out of your 6, more or less, right? If you have 7 alliances, you would still want to have 4. If you have 5 alliances, you'd want to have 3, right? Something to that effect. As I said, there's an asterisk here that could apply for lower ratios, but usually you kind of want to have a 2 to 1, something where you at least kind of have a +1 over. Number 3, you want to have majority, if not all of your alliances in the LT rotation. Same thing for kind of in zone 3. However, you may factor this more so in wanting to actually have all of your family alliances or group alliances in the LT rotation, and then you can just decide if you want to include others depending on how supportive and consistent and engaging they've been overall while being there in the kingdom. And then you have number 4, which is your project is able to address rogues, other groups, and kind of establishes your general universal dominance, right? Where it doesn't mean that you're going around and bullying everyone, but it just means that because you have the largest group and also that you were able to address any rogues and any other potential larger groups, or if you had to fight groups, you kind of came out on top, right? That just means that your group was able to remain intact, right? Then we get to number 5, which is that your group is in a position to manage the kingdom, right? Because you're the majority or the largest, biggest group, right? Biggest kid on the block. You were able to, by making it to zone 3, getting to your LT rotations, you've put yourself in a position to manage the kingdom. Then, I guess number 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6. Right, the next one here is your project's goal, right, really is to establish your vision, right? This kind of is an extension of the managing point before, but it's really to take your vision, and this is kind of what we said even before, of being able to instill your vision in the kingdom, right? Where you're starting to really kind of start putting things into place because you set yourself up to be in a position to get LT, have the majority group, that presence, and now not only in addition to the managing, but you're really kind of starting to enact and kind of disseminate your vision to the populace. This is what I feel, and let me be very clear here, this is bare minimum, right, of what you can argue would define your project as a success. Because you have to think about it, right? If your project, your group of people are able to make it from zone 1 to zone 2, and then from zone 2 to zone 3 with the majority control, and you've been able to get Lost Temple, I mean, that's kind of it, right? You have to think of it logically, right? It doesn't matter if you make it to a year. Sure, anything you make it past capturing Lost Temple time-wise is great. But if the objective for a project is to go into a kingdom, get majority control, get LT control, and be able to start managing the kingdom in the vision that you want to enact, then your project is successful, right? If you've put your project on the path to accomplishing that, your project is successful, right? You have at minimum defined success, even if you make it to 80 days and then KVK1 goes, to shiitake mushrooms, right? And then everything kind of falls out, right? Now you would then be more so talking about kind of kingdom success, right? Because remember, your jumper project success ends at you capturing LT, having majority control, not really having any, rogues or rebellions, if you will, right? You pretty much have quelled any resistance. You have LT, majority of your alliances, if not all, are in zone 3, and you pretty much have, quote unquote, kingdom control, right? Majority kingdom presence. Your project is at that point successful. Then it transitions from your project to the kingdom, right? Now then we start looking at, okay, well, your project was successful. Okay, well, now how successful is the kingdom, right? So it transitions from you kind of being in the project state, right? Because it's kind of a hybrid, right? Once you get into the kingdom, it kind of is your project within the kingdom. But for all intents and purposes, because you haven't met your project's goals yet, right? When it's day 1, you're still in that phase. Once you've done all of those things, around whatever it is, day 70, day 80, give or take, right? For when LT opens, and then you end up getting capture, and then you're in that rotation with your group, and obviously, dependent if you allow any others in, your project has, for all intents and purposes, been successful, right? Of course, you obviously want to remain as intact as possible, right? You don't want to have a lot of positional changes. Ideally, you want to try and keep the majority of your leadership and your management structure intact. But if your project makes it to that point, you have succeeded in your primary objective. So again, I want to just point that out, make that very clear, because some people like have it in their mind where it's totally different, or they don't understand how you know your kingdom loses KVK1, and then like, oh, your project's a failure, or you lose a leader and you do a replacement, and things just don't really necessarily seem on the up and up, even though it's still going okay. Oh, your project's a failure, right? Or you have an alliance that migrates out before you guys make it to LT. Oh, your project failed, right? No, you have to really look at what is the actual objective for the project. Just because you might have a player or an alliance or some type of other situation that happens does not mean that your overall project as a whole has failed. You really have to understand what is the actual purpose of a jump project in the first place in order to then actually be able to assess. I will say this at the very end. How I would define if a project has truly failed is if you went in with however many alliances and you were not able to get to what you wanted to get to. Now, my vision, my opinion on that is that if you're doing a jump project, you're going in to establish your system in the kingdom, your vision of the kingdom, which means you need to have majority controller presence and you need to be able to capture LT. Now, you can make the argument, yeah, well, we could go in with just, a super spender alliance and do all that and be number one. I mean, technically you could. And if that is your vision, that's your goal, then yeah, technically you could argue that is a form of success. However, I like to view it more so as, you have to kind of think, farther than that. And so, I'm not a big believer on kind of running less than 6 alliances going into a kingdom. However, though that is what I view as having the highest percentage chances for success, right? If you're thinking about beyond once you transition from the jump project to the kingdom, it doesn't mean that you cannot have less alliances than that in a jump project and still see success, right? Let's be very clear there. So to me, if you failed your project, that means that you failed on being able to accomplish your primary objective, which really, for all intents and purposes, should be to get control of the kingdom. Right, and that can happen for any number of ways. Maybe you just run into rogues, and that's kind of an immovable situation, right? I would argue maybe that's a non or an uncontrollable situation. Maybe you end up with another project there, and you guys fight it out, and they end up winning. Maybe you have other alliances that are in the kingdom, and they just band together against your project, and you guys end up losing out. Maybe you have poor, internal drama within the group, and it literally just all falls apart, meaning it doesn't carry on, it doesn't continue or anything. Everyone basically just stops and goes their separate way, and really no one kind of picks up the pieces, right? It has to kind of be those extreme situations and examples of how you would really categorize a project if it has failed. And that's really, if anything, I would say hopefully this video does a good job of covering and really helps in defining what really goes into a project being successful and a project failing. Because, again, one of the most disappointing things I often see is people that will just kind of make these blanket, broad statements on a project that has succeeded or failed when they know nothing about what actually happened or what went into it. For anyone that ever sees me post somewhere, or if you hear me talk in these videos, right, or you join me for any of my town halls and in our projects that we've ran, you know that I reiterate this very often. You have to have context, you have to have an understanding of something, and you can't just kind of make this false accusation or statement. You have to kind of do your due diligence. So with that being said, I hope everyone enjoyed me kind of covering both sides of it. That, I think, is pretty much going to be it for me today. So I hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know anything and everything you're thinking in the comments down below. I would also love to hear some examples of if you've been in a jump project, and it was successful, how did it go? When you guys got to LT, did you feel like, oh wow, we finally did it, we finally accomplished it? Was it kind of an aha moment or some kind of relief, if you will, once you were able to make it there? And if you were in a project that failed, kind of based on some of the criteria or some of the points I mentioned, or even something close to it, right? I'd love to hear what was your experience there, how did it go for you, and why do you think it failed? Right? I'd really love to hear. So let me know down there in the comments below. That is it for me. Until next time, I'll catch y'all later.